Growing up in the 2000s, most female characters from that time or earlier fit into one of the following categories: love interest, damsel, damsel love interest, bitch, friend, villain, that one girl on the team who is used to check off a box, or on the rarest of occasions, a well-written individual. This is where a distinction needs to be made. Bad people are not always bad characters, and good people are not always good characters. I think a huge issue many writers have while writing women is that they try so hard to make them a symbol of purity and goodness that I find myself growing progressively more sexist along with the show. At one point while watching JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Jotaro called his mom a stupid bitch or something, and I caught myself yelling at the screen, "Yeah, Jotaro, get her." If all your female characters are written to be dry or completely devoted to the progression of a male counterpart, I'm not going to care about them. And as a disclaimer, I'm going to be shitting on some of my favorite pieces of media, but I won't have time to stop after each critique to remind everyone that yes, I still love the series. The problem isn't when a female character is introduced as a love interest. The problem is when the female character's whole personality is that they're the love interest. Putting Sakura into this category is offensive to the category and not vice versa, but if you endured part 1 of Naruto, then you already know that amongst the dozens of women Kishimoto seems to hate, Sakura is at the top of the list. She's introduced as the girl who Naruto likes and the girl who likes Sasuke, and whenever an actual battle comes up, she sits on the sidelines and waits while Naruto and Sasuke get their development. Don't worry, she'll have plenty of time to develop in the Chunin exams. Not to mention that Naruto is a series that follows the women are healers trope, but I'll come back to that later. Even in Shippuden, after I had a fleeting sliver of hope that Sakura might just be a badass now, she ends up falling into old patterns. It doesn't help that in Boruto, nearly every female character has been demoted to housewife. Having romantic feelings towards someone isn't necessarily demoting a female character to a love interest role alone, but it's so obvious when the writers forget to give women personalities aside from, I want a piece of ass. Like, let me just put this picture right here. Yep, everyone already knows what I have to say, and I didn't even say anything. Of course, examples won't always be as explicit as Sakura and Juvia, who feel like handouts in a conversation like this. Even in some of my favorite series with well-written women, the writing will never be perfect. Who wants to talk about RWBY? RWBY is a series that, if you look at it from a far distance, and squint your eyes a bit, looks like it has well-written female characters. Unfortunately, it has one of the worst cases of a female character being fridged that I've ever seen. RWBY is interesting because it came from a male-centered industry, but has 4 girls at the center. If you have 2.5 hours to spare, you should check out this video because it does a killer job pointing out RWBY's issues with writing.
I don't see them as like, these are 4 females that are awesome. I'm like, no, these are just 4 cool kids that are fun.
While the common thought of just write them like you would any character sounds tempting for someone writing identities that don't align with their own, it doesn't always work. If you go into that writing process treating every character the same, they're not going to fit comfortably in a show that will inevitably have the writer's own perspectives and biases bleed through. i.e., if you're 2 men writing a show that mainly follows 4 girls, you should probably consult women. If you're 2 white people writing an allegory for racial injustice, you probably just shouldn't. Back to Pyrrha. The writers were trying so hard to ignore gender that they weren't aware when they fell into stereotypes. In this case, fridging. That's when a female character is killed or put away in order to further a male character's development. It's become a less gendered term over time, but I'll be using it in the old-fashioned way because it's convenient for me. Pyrrha was the OP bitch in the show, which is cool. She was tall, strong, kind, but still had flaws and struggles that made her interesting to follow, especially in Volume 3. So what do you do with a well-written badass warrior woman? Kill her before the show enters its main plot so that the most prominent male character has a reason to grow. I know we can't avoid every writing choice simply because one character's male and one character's female, but come on, it's RWBY. If I had $1 for every time a damsel was a love interest and a love interest was a damsel, I would still have student loan debt, but a lot less of it.
Could someone stamp my frequent kidnapping card?
How about I talk about a good example for a change? Princess Bubblegum is introduced in Adventure Time as Finn the Human's older love interest. At the time, we're thinking she's like 18, not 800, but it's still enough of an age gap that fans knew immediately Finn was going to get the Wendy treatment. Wait. Never mind, PB patented it. But anyone with 2 eyes connected to a brain was shipping whatever the fuck was going on here, and the show cemented the fact that Princess Bubblegum didn't just exist in the show to give Finn missions and be eye candy. Huh? See what I did there? Eye candy? Candy? The show didn't stop at Princess Bubblegum existing beyond the role of love interest. She was typically the one using her brain and science to get the heroes out of danger. Even better, we learn that she's not some sweet princess. Instead, Bubblegum is arguably one of the most messed up good guys in modern animation. Don't get me wrong, if she existed in real life, I would be so against everything she stands for, but in terms of how she's written as a character, I'm suddenly team gaslight gatekeep girl boss. She makes mistakes, huge mistakes, and she has complicated relationships. She has depth. And when I turned on the first episode, I was expecting her to exist as the Princess Peach. I mean, come on, she's a pink princess. But the fact she's aggressively pink just adds flavor to her unethical tendencies. Newer shows coming out are taking notes that fans don't want damsels in distress anymore. They want a crew of unique characters who, sure, may need saving from time to time, but it's never a gendered deal. I won't lie, I love bitch characters. They're conniving and base level, and I absolutely love that they're a package deal with a poorly executed Valley Girl accent.
You losers!
At the same time, bitch characters often exist for the sake of
female on female fighting.
God, I remember watching those old shitty Mortal Kombat movies and thinking this was peak feminism. I think a big reason a lot of women in the audience secretly root for the Sharpays of the world is because these rude bimbos represent an ugly part of media that pits women against each other. It hurts even more when these female characters have bad blood over some dude. I think I care less when this trope is in things like Barbie Life in the Dream House, where nothing is meant to be taken seriously, as opposed to Avatar Legend of Korra. There isn't any character growth in Life in the Dream House, but there is in Korra, which means the time spent pitting Korra and Asami against each other could have been spent on stuff the audience actually cared about. You know, like a story. And I know that Korra and Asami get along in series, but when you're writing a story, you have to acknowledge potential audience reactions. Even if the two female characters aren't being pitted against each other in story, the show is still setting them up this way for the audience. Anyway, I digress. Back to the bitches. There is a time and place for these types of characters, but if it's in a series that's meant to be taken seriously, then it's usually distracting from the potential plot. Sure, you can make rude female characters. Rude women exist. But don't just use it as an excuse to have two girls fight over some dude. No one wants that. I think that's why I can't handle harem anime. How am I supposed to learn about the characters when the only thing they do on screen is obsess over some human embodiment of fat-free vanilla froyo? So most female characters fit into a few roles as heroes, but they used to be, and in many cases still are, white, straight, skinny. You get the idea. So what do we do when we have someone who doesn't fit this? Well, we need the best friend character who is barely in any relevant scenes. Most people have heard of the token black friend trope, and it's super common in cartoons. These characters are always ready with advice and support, but rarely have their own characters fleshed out. I know it's not animated, but if you've seen Tall Girl, then you already know how prevalent this can be. Did you know they actually made a sequel to that movie? Another way a female character can play a tertiary friend is that classic two guys, one girl friend group layout that was so aggressively prevalent in the mid-2000s. I can't even think of an example where the girl didn't end up with one of the dudes either. Once again, it's not inherently bad to write a show like that, it just gets annoying if it's the only outcome you ever see. Even some modern cartoons that are, in most other ways, fantastic, place some female badasses on the sideline. Who loves the Owl House? The question should be, who doesn't? Unfortunately, and I know a lot of this is because Dana Terrace had to rush to the conclusion, Willow got kind of shoved aside as the plot picked up. She shows up here and there, sure, and she's still the most OP of the younger witches, but it's a shame her character wasn't explored more. See, sometimes it happens unintentionally. I'm not just a hater. This is actually where I think older animation thrived in writing its female characters. Because if you're not supposed to love the character, then thank God that means the writers can give them an actual personality. Remember this bitch and her emotional support himbo? Our current type of female villain I didn't like was the seductress, because yes, even the best pieces of media felt the need to have a sexy lady with big mommy milkers pulling the strings. I know some women can find this type of villain empowering, but personally, once again personally, Shannon's opinion, I think it's only fair game if you're sexualizing your male villains too. That's right, I want the Joker doing slut drops every time Catwoman does. The new Harley Quinn series is hard to clock because they keep talking about sexism in the field of villainy, and it feels like satire about how we praise women exploiting positions of power as girlbossing. Similar to Bubblegum and Adventure Time, I'd rather watch Harley Quinn do objectively bad things all day than watch someone use their feminine wiles to boobily boob their way past the good guys. Honestly, this goes for the good guys too. Every sick group of heroes has their token girl and token person of color. Bonus points if you can check off both boxes with one character. And I'm not saying there is any set ratio to fill, but it's weird while watching cartoons today that I remember there used to be like one relevant female character per squad. Now when they have a boys' night in She-Ra and the Princesses of Power, they need to invite the horse. As I said, there isn't a quota, but even the male characters who exist now are much more developed than they used to be. It happens, all industries grow with time, and animation is definitely one of these industries. And seeing as Rebecca Sugar was the first person on Cartoon Network to develop a show who wasn't a man, less than 10 years ago may I add, it makes sense that we're seeing more female characters in animation now than ever before. And it's not always bad if you have fewer female characters. Look at the early Avatar squad. This is fine. We have different personalities and unique contributions to the show. Now Smurfette, she's here to check off a box. We need one of the blue people to be fuckable? I don't know, give her high heels. Holy shit though, I googled it and it's actually called the Smurfette principle. The more you know. I said I would come back to this. In Naruto, the female characters heal. This can be tied back to gender roles in many areas of history, but I think what pisses me off about this the most is that it's in Naruto. Maybe this is why I stand 10-10 so aggressively, but there are ways to write women as healers that isn't degrading, and Sakura could have done it. We were so close. Avatar, I think, wrote this into the show well. We actually unpack the idea that there is a gender expectation with healing versus fighting, and Katara decides that she wants to do both. It feels like Katara is the healer because she's the waterbender and not because she's the girl. It's also refreshing when men are attributed this role because yes, men should be allowed to exist beyond the macho manly idea of them that media often paints. Josuke and Steven are two of my favorite examples. I just found out that this is called the white magician girl trope. There is a trope name for everything. This one feels more like it's a toss-up on what gender will be the squad's healer, so when newer shows have a female character who is a healer, it's not their whole personality. Woohoo, success! There is no one right way to write a female character, but the best way to go about it is by adding variety in characters. No one cares that Starfire is emotional because she's also strong, and can give real talk when necessary. No one cares that Katara is the healer because she can also kick ass. No one cares that Winry doesn't fight because she's given personality and interest beyond the show's action sequences. It's all about that variety, biatches. In general, I think we're heading in a better direction with how female characters are written in media, and the sudden inclusion of buff ladies has been much to my liking. But we still have a way to go.